First of all, congratulations to a Canadian company acquiring MQA in Lensbrook. And
Well, Quebec.
well, oh yeah, fair enough, fair enough. Quasi Canada.
That's going to get me some messages, I'm sure. On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk SmartThings Pro, Trinnov's new education center, HDTracks streaming, and Apple Threads. All this more on this episode of ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek, episode 436, Recommended Levels. Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek, your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matthew Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week I'm pleased to be joined by one of my longtime friends, Mr. David Pedigo. He's the Chief Operations Officer over at Trinnov Audio. How you doing, David?
I am super, living the dream. How about you?
I am doing fantastic, although it is really stinking hot here today, which I do not like because I'm a winter kid. We also were supposed to be joined by Mr. Bronner, but unfortunately he is under the weather, so we're wishing him a quick recovery because honestly he's kind of lazy. He needs to get back to work. All right, David, we are going to talk about a couple of things. The first one coming to us from CE Pro. Samsung brings IoT control and automation to businesses with SmartThings Pro. At Infocom, they essentially showed off a business version of their smart home platform, SmartThings, bringing control and automation of a variety of IoT devices to the business environment. Go read through the story, take a look at some of the pictures. It looks quite interesting, actually, because we know that there are a ton of essentially IoT devices in corporate environments, in boardrooms, etc., doing a lot of little things that Samsung looks like they're wanting to get into. So, Dave, do you think this will hold value for building managers and integrators alike? Or is this just kind of a fancy way of Samsung integrating, for the most part, their products into a commercial platform?
Here's the thing is there is a lot of brain power over there. To be honest with you, since SmartThings was implemented, I've actually been quite disappointed with the overall implementation. I thought it would have caught more. It would have caught on more than it has to date. However, I do think it's an opportunity, but it'll take some time to kind of see how it really shakes out. It's always nice to have competition, and right now there's even still in 2024. I mean, we were talking about things like this back in 2014. I mean, this is 10 years later, and you're not really seeing. It's still kind of a, for lack of a better term, there's other than like your Crestrons, your Control 4s, AMX in the control world was bought by Samsung. You're still seeing this disparate individual one-off kind of devices where you open up a separate app. So I hope so. I don't know. I'm skeptical.
Do you think that Samsung's approach to this, though, right? Like they're talking very basic stuff, right? Some obviously TVs, air conditioning, lighting, like some very, very basic stuff. They're talking about opening it up to some partners. We've seen from the building management side, right? If you are playing with Crestron, Amex, some of the bigger players in that market, and you're automating everything, they've got a good handle on it. But a lot of office spaces, they're not automating stuff into centralized platforms. Do you think this has the potential to go well above and beyond all of those disparate systems that are currently in place?
Maybe. I mean, here's the thing: it's certainly more affordable. Even at the entry level for a lot of, whether it's a Crestron or a Control 4 or whatever, it's still very expensive, especially in large commercial buildings. I still think there's kind of a learning curve that will be required, how to operate it If it gets integrated into some kind of voice control, those kind of things, maybe it'll be easier to use. I'm still overall a little skeptical of, okay, well, you know what, if I'm going to use this, then I'm going to have to get a SmartThings app and then kind of control it. So I, I think that there's still some work to be done. I'm hopeful. I guess the best way to say it is I'm hopeful, and it is certainly an opportunity, particularly for tons and tons and tons of businesses that could use basic automation without a, for lack of a better term, automation budget. So perhaps.
That's kind of where I sit on it, is that because we have a handful of clients that use SmartThings, and they use them in their second properties where they don't need much. They just want to have essentially some remote access to some devices, and it works really well for that. I think if this is something that small and like SMB to the medium-sized business market can look at for, again, some generic information that goes a step beyond their Dakine controller, I think it's got a lot of potential. All right, let's change topics for a second. This is also from CE Pro. Trinnov Audio hosts opens their first U.S. office with a singular purpose focused on education. Over the Memorial Day weekend, they held a grand opening event in East Hampton, Connecticut, where they brought in a bunch of partners and industry friends and invited some press. Somehow my invite didn't make it across the border, it seems, but that's okay.
Well, we've got one person to blame, and she happens to be on this call.
I get it. It's fine. It's perfectly all right. But this is a really big deal for Trinnov. Tell me a little bit about the push to open a showroom, but also the push for that to focus on education. Is that education for end users? Is that education for dealers? Is it a little bit of both?
So we've had an office there for years, but we didn't have a theater in a classroom. So over the last year, we've built out the theater in the classroom. And the theater is amazing, actually. It's a 13.8.9 system that has waveforming incorporated. And the goal of the theater, for lack of a better term, is for dealers and end users who would come with dealers. So if, particularly it'll be more convenient for people on the East Coast, but we've got clients that are coming in from all over the place who want to experience waveforming as an example, or just what Trinnov can do, or what any of our partners can do. So we've got Ascendo for our speakers, Barco for our projector, Seymour for our screen, and Kaleidoscape as the player. And it sounds amazing. Absolutely incredible. And so you have that, and then we have a classroom, and the purpose of the classroom is for Trinnov to train mostly its dealers, and then if any of the partners wanted to do events as well and do training. But basically, so we have a level 1 and a level 2 certification, and those certifications are designed to make sure that those that are installing and are calibrating a altitude unit know what they're doing and are able to provide ultimately an experience that is what anybody who's buying a Trinnov is really looking for, which is best in class, world-class audio theater experience. It's awesome.
It was definitely one of by far the best demo I heard at Expo last year was the beamforming. One of the things in the article that they highlight is they were talking with Peter Aylett, who has been on the show before. You know him from CD and a bunch of other things. He talks about starting with the room, and that the acoustics are the first thing that you need to think about, which I don't think is a paradigm shift, but I'm always amazed at conversations I get into over home theater and dedicated rooms that focus on the tech first. What does it mean to start with the room, and how does something like, cinema designer,
Yeah.
for example, play into
Yeah.
that?
So that's a beautiful question. I thank you for teeing that up for me. So first of all,
You're welcome.
when it comes to a design, and actually Peter will do the same thing. So so when Peter came out, so I asked him to teach an RP22 session. So he did a session on RP22, which is basically, it used to be called CEB22, which is home theater audio design, and now it's just basically audio design. But he starts with the same philosophy that we've had for many years, which is that when you design a theater, you start with seats. And the reason why you start with the seat is because where you are going to sit is going to determine the viewing angle that you're going to use, what is going to determine the width of the speakers that you're going to use. That's going to determine whether you need wide speakers or you don't need wide speakers. There's so many things to think about. And then, so a couple things to think about, like one, which is people will say, oh, well, you know what? I just want to buy speakers, and they will just determine what speakers they want without any idea of, what the maximum SPL level is. So if you download, which you should, CEB22, and you can see what the recommended level, they have 4 levels. So basically from this, any system should do it all the way up to basically what we've got in Connecticut, which is this crazy wild system. What SPL levels that you're going to be able to hit, or if it were video, as an example, what is the overall brightness output that you're going to get in SDR and HDR outputs. So you need to be able to design a system that is going to be able to meet the minimum specifications that your clients are looking for, which is why I think the cinema designer is so absolutely amazing, because what it's done, and I've known Guy, who's the guy behind it, pun intended, for many, many years. He is a engineer by training, and really, really strong in math. And so what they've done over the last 10 years or so is just take all the mathematical calculations. And so first of all, it really does start with your seat. And this is where you're going to sit. And then so you put in the shape of the room, the dimensions of the room, you put where your seats are, and all of a sudden the math is already done for you. And if you decide to slide your speakers or your seats back a little bit, then it's going to change what the calculus is for what speakers you need, what amplification you need. I'm really doing a disservice to talk about what the cinema designer is, but it is amazing with the ability to what they put in, and they put in the ability to do waveforming as well. So here's the size of the room. This is where your subwoofers would go. So whether it's waveforming or whatever, ultimately, the most important thing is to understand that there is an art to cinema design. There's no doubt about it. And the acoustic side of it, like Peter's talking about, are very important. Trinnov, as an example, we're always espousing that we want you to treat your room. We want you to use acoustic products to treat the room, because the better the room is, the fewer the filters that we need to put in. And there's also a lot of people that overtreat a room or do some absolutely hideous things. There's a company here in Indianapolis. I ran Oralex Acoustics for years, and there's a company here in Indy that was so proud that, yeah, we put 1/2-inch foam on every single surface in the room. And I'm like, oh my God, that's the worst thing I've heard, because all that does is it just takes all the high frequencies, kills it, and then it hasn't done anything else. So, there's so much to it, and there is an art, and you can't really mathematically solve the art part of it. But then there is the mathematical part. The thing I love about the cinema designer is the fact that then, like, everything's in real time, 3D design, whatever. So then you can basically visualize what the room is like, and it'll ray trace. So like if you want to look at, here's the dispersion pattern of a speaker, you can see what the dispersion pattern of the speaker is to make sure that that is going to actually wind up hitting all of the audience. So there's just, it's just a lot. There's just, I'm a big fan. I might be biased because, Guy is a friend of mine, but it's absolutely incredible. And so, going back to like what Peter says about the design is really important. And it's not just what it looks, or it's not just the equipment. It is the combination of all of those things together. As an example, it's like people, one of the things I think that anybody who's doing anything with cinema should understand is they should understand that in order, we perceive something twice as loud at 10 decibels. So 10 dB up, it sounds twice as loud to us. In order to get 10 dB up, you'd have to go up 10 dB, but 3 dB in power is twice as much power. So you think, oh, I want to double how loud it is. Let me just double the wattage output. But no, that only goes up 3 dB and you need to go up 10 dB. So really, in order to get that 10 dB, you're really going up about 800% in power. So, sorry, 3, 2, yeah, about 8 dB in power. So there's so much to be done. But what Peter did, which was beautiful, is explain what these levels are, and then you can go to Connecticut if you want to, and you can hear what those different levels sound like by using different presets as an example.
Yeah, that's a great example. All right, let's change topics for a second. This comes to us from Residential Tech Today, and Jeremy Glowacki, who's a good friend of the show as well. Lensbrook Media Group has partnered with HDTracks to create a new streaming service. This will be the first subscription service that will use the application of the Area by MQA Labs codec. They've wanted to launch an HDTracks streaming service for a while, and they found a partner in Lensbrook to make that happen. As I said, it's the first one to use this new MQA delivery codec, and is supposed to be available in mobile, as well as it will find its way into many of the world's leading high-end audio ecosystems, apps, and brands. Dave, when you see this, I'm excited that HDTracks is coming out with a streaming service, specifically because they're using the MQA aspect of it. My concern is the lack of transparency on how it will be available and how we'll implement it. What do you see with this as far as coming down the road? And does it have the promise that I want to think it does?
So first of all, congratulations to a Canadian company acquiring MQA in Lensbrook. And
well, Quebec.
Well, oh yeah, fair enough. Quasi Canada. So
that's going to get me some messages, I'm sure.
So here's the thing. One is, it's no surprise that Lensbrook is doing this because they acquired MQA. Mm-hmm. So
yes,
and over the past decade or so, MQA has had a hard time really getting traction because of various forms. I'm really excited, to be honest with you, about HDTracks being able to do this. I think that in general, competition is good, and competition in general strives to make everyone better. And so this is, for lack of a better term, a bit of a way to kind of take on Tidal a little bit. As for they're not being transparent about how they're going to transport it, how you can get it, I think the answer is they don't know. So would be.
So do you think it's the same for content?
Yeah, I mean, there's already a decent amount of content out there in MQA, but then it doesn't have to only be MQA. I am assuming, I read the article, but I'm assuming that that you can do 192.24, so it would be whatever that other competition is. So I don't think that it is it is MQA only. It's just, if you want to get MQA, if you've got an MQA player, to be selfish, Trinnov can decode MQA. It's great. Sorry, I'm not trying to be selfish here, but I think it's more. I think HDTracks has lots of options, and so I think it's more about the 192.24 content with the occasional MQA than anything else. Would be my assumption. I think it's going to take a while for them to form the business models to be able to figure out exactly how they're going to deliver it. So you basically announce that you're doing this so you can start gaining traction and get partners that are interested. So and the other thing is to take on Apple Music as well, but that's not doing high res. So I think this is exciting, but I go into it a little skeptical in that I think it's going to take time for them to really figure out exactly how they're going to truly get it to their primary audience, which is going to be the hi-fi market.
Yeah, that's this. When I first read the article, that was the first thing that jumped out into my mind was how that delivery process is going to work, who they're going to be able to offer it through, which again, I know we'll see that as we come.
I'm curious if they will go and work with Rune and get that incorporated into Rune, because that would be quite nice, to be honest with you.
Yeah, there's a variety of vendors that I'm expecting to see them on. All right, let's hit one last story real quick, just because I have to. This comes to us from CE Pro. Apple quietly adds Thread radios to Macs and iPads, signaling smart home ambitions in the FCC filings for their current slate or new slate of Macs and iPads from 2023 on. They have included the Thread radios into those devices. This was reported initially by The Verge and a couple others. They're in the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max, as well as a variety of iPad Pros, iPad Airs, and MacBook Pros and Airs as well, et cetera, et cetera. When you see this, Dave, I completely understand putting that Thread radio into iPads and iPhones. I'm a little surprised they've put it into MacBook Pros and iMacs. But at the same time, I don't know if that's just a thing where that radio is part of a larger radio package that gets dumped into those machines. Do you see this as future planning or something more designed?
I really think it is more future design with. So if you look at Apple as an example, they're part of that Thread consortium. So they're bought into that. Apple has made no bones about the fact that they want to be able to help people control their homes. And I think you could probably tie that into the work from home market. Is I'm working from home, I need to control my lights, or I need to do something else, and I'm actually working at this time. Now I don't have to get to my iPad, do those kind of things to be able to control whatever. I think it's it is by design, but for future use more than anything else. And I think it is probably the cost of that was so minimal that it was not a hindrance for them to put that in. So I think no surprise, they want to be able to lock or unlock your door or do any of these kinds of things. But I don't think it's for them. If this was a bigger deal for them, I can guarantee you that they would have announced it. The fact that they are there and they haven't announced it means that this is, in my opinion, this is more future proofing, with potential hint into what is yet to come. Because that's another thing. I mean, you look at SmartThings and you think, I said at the beginning of this that I was a little disappointed in what SmartThings has done. I'm more disappointed with Apple than I am with SmartThings because of the penetration that Apple has in HomeKit. Like,
Ditto.
Is anybody really using HomeKit at this point?
Nope, it's dead. It's dead. All right, Dave, let's wrap it there. Thank you so much for joining us. If people want to connect with you, learn more about Trinnov, where can they do that? 2 places.
One, on Twitter, X. I refuse to call it X, but whatever you want to call it.
You just did.
That's stupid. at Dave Pedigo. And then you can just email me at davepedigo at dave.pedigo@trinnov.com.
Excellent. Thank you again for joining us. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter or X at Matt D. Scott and most other social platforms as well. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek,
the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.